here we are again. It's another episode of your favorite new podcast. Although it's not really new so much anymore. I guess it's been around for a little bit. 24 episodes, counting this one. And tonight, I know last week we got a little, down in the dumps a little bit, and that's how I was feeling, but it was an important episode, and that's fine. Sometimes you gotta talk about some grown-up topics. But this week, we are back with something new and fun and fresh. It's comic books. That's right. Let's talk about this. Now, comic books. A lot of times in media and things like that, you see people portrayed who read comic books as a variety of words, like nerdy, geeky, etc., and people who are too into things, and sometimes they have bad hygiene and things like that. That's not true. There's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of stereotypes in anything, and comic books is no stranger to stereotypes or controversy, as we'll find out as we go along in the show. But there are comic books for just about everything. And it's not just for superheroes and for things like that. You get them for fantasy. You get them for sci-fi. You get them for little kids. You get them for religious stuff. There's Christian comic books and things out there which are pretty interesting. I'm not really into that kind of thing, but if they have them. So if that's what you like, they're there for you. When I was a kid, I knew people who had comic books. I didn't have very many. Because we didn't really have a comic book store anywhere near me. We didn't have a place you could reliably get them. And they were expensive. Comic books generally, they come issue by issue, right? And the issues are not very long. They don't seem very long. Like the story can take up 12, 15, 30 to 40 issues or more for a single story arc. And each of those comic books is only like a few pages long, and the price adds up, so it's expensive. And we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up at first, Things got better as it went along, but when I was young enough to really appreciate comic books at the time, we did not have that kind of spendable cash. So I didn't have very many. I'd get one or two here and there through various things, like sometimes at a bookstore they'd have free comic book day, which they do to this day. There's a lot of comic book stores and bookstores and independent people who participate in what's called Free Comic Book Day. And I don't remember what day of the year it is. I think it's already passed for this year. I'll have to look it up, I suppose. But I'd get like a comic book here and there, or if I bought like an action figure, sometimes it would come with a comic or a mini comic, like a little small one that could fit in your pocket. So I didn't have a lot of comic books when I was a kid. But as I got older, I got a little bit more into them, depending. I don't get into the superhero comic books quite so much. Because while I like some superhero-related things, I like some Marvel movies, and the first Batman film with Michael Keaton. And that's probably not the first one. There was a first one with Adam West before that. There was like a made-for-TV movie, I think. I don't think it was in theaters, but the first major motion picture Batman film with Michael Keaton from 1989. I saw that in the theater when I was 6 years old. And you might think, well, that's kind of a dark movie for a 6-year-old, isn't it? Well, the 80s were a bit of a different time for children and for adults and things, so, The only thing I really remember is that big logo at the beginning and the music. Now, I've seen it since, so I know what the whole movie's like, but my only actual memory of being that age was having that big logo on the screen after that opening credits sequence. That stuck with me. But, yeah, comic books. So I saw some comic book movies and things over the years. And again, as an adult, I've gotten more into some of them, even though I never was into a lot of the superhero stuff on the whole. Nowadays, since you guys know I'm into the transforming robots, I'm into Transformers, the Hasbro stuff. And I've read a lot of Transformers comic books, and they're a lot different from the cartoons and the movies. They're a lot darker. Like, the movies got kind of dark, but man, nothing like the comic books. The comics are super dark, and there's a lot of damage that gets done. And that's how it is a lot of times with the comic books. A lot of times the adaptations. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics, before the cartoon and before the first movie was loosely based mostly on the introductory issues of the Ninja Turtles comic book. And that comic book got into some pretty deep areas. In the movie, you know, there's that spot where I can't remember who it is. I think it's Leonardo gets beat up by the Foot Clan pretty bad. In the comic book, it's even worse than that. He really gets beat up. He gets better, you know, but he gets beat up. And they're still making Ninja Turtle comics to this day. They have one called The Last Ronin, where there's only one Ninja Turtle left. And that's super dark. Super dark. But all the shows are all, you know, the newest movie that's coming out, it's Mutant Mayhem, as of this recording, as of this broadcast. And it's all bright and different and, you know, more modern and things like that, modern retelling. So nothing like the way the comic books were. But they got into, like, the aliens in the comic book, like those walking Triceratops dudes. And, yeah, it was pretty hefty. My dad had a couple of the omnibus, like, collect graphic novel versions, which have... You can get a graphic novel a lot of times these days, which is basically like a whole series, a whole story arc, all in one easy-to-read edition. And it's often like made like a paperback, but it's the full size of comic book. And he had a couple of those, and I read those as a kid. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. But they make... And it's not just comic books. Like, comics as a whole are a big deal. Like, every Sunday when I was a kid, I would read the Sunday Funnies. And some of you folks would be like, ah, yes, a refined palate, the Sunday Funnies. Because that's what you called them. Because they were funny little 3-panel strips of your favorite characters. You'd have Garfield in there. And that's where they built most of the Garfield cartoons from the late 80s from the comics. And they have this big collected editions, kind of like graphic novels, but it's just a collection of individual strips and stories. Garfield and Foxtrot, what was it? Dansbury? I don't remember. All these different things. Peanuts, the Peanuts with Charlie Brown, you know, all that stuff. They were in there. And you got all the political cartoons, too, that the kids don't understand, but, you know, we're always trying to find out, what was the punchline here? They said a joke here, but I don't think it's funny. And the adults would be like, he got a zinger right there on Senator so-and-so, or whatever. And now they have really sophisticated, sometimes they're very sophisticated, and sometimes they're very crude political cartoons in, like, the New Yorker and some of the other high-end newspapers. Newspapers are different than how they used to be as well. Like, the prices have all gone up, and now that everybody has online, you can read the newspapers, like the articles online, but it's all opinions, and it's all behind paywalls and things, and it's not like the old days. Not like picking up a newspaper on a Sunday and getting the funnies, and then your parents would be looking at the sports and the everything else, you know. Not as fun as it used to be. But comic books. There's also, like, there's a whole subset of really mature comic books. And I don't mean mature in, like, a really, like, they're in an adult way, but I don't mean they're, like, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of adult thing. I'm trying to keep the show, you know, kid-friendly here if you're listening with your family. And, which you should, because there's all kinds of family stuff in here, you know? So, but, yeah, there's more grown-up comic series. Like, there's Spawn. You got Spawn from Dark Horse. Dark Horse had a lot of that. Dark Horse had some of the Alien and Predator comics. And then there was Marvel and DC did runs of Sandman. And Sandman was my jam. I've got the whole collected everything from Sandman, except for some of the newest stuff. He did the author, Neil Gaiman, who I've said before in one of my earlier episodes, is one of my favorite authors. he does the writing for Sandman. He put out new issues like a few years back, and it was basically just an extra, like, tacked on chunk for the existing mythology and things, and I haven't gotten that yet. It's hard to find in a physical format, and it's very expensive. It was part of some Kickstarter, I think, something like that. I don't remember what the whole deal was, but it was not easy to get a hold of. So, but I've got the collected, like, all the Sandman stuff, and I watched part of the show on, I think it's on Netflix, maybe. I don't remember what streaming service it's on, but I watched part of it. It wasn't bad. I don't get into shows so much as I used to. I'm not big into TV shows or streaming shows or whatever. But Sandman I was big into, and that's grown-up stuff. That's very adult. So if you're a kid listening and you're getting into comic books, then you don't start there. You don't start with Sandman. Start with some other things, and then go to Sandman. When you're bigger. When you're bigger. But, yeah, comic books. And an interesting thing about comic books also, this is for, I know not a lot of the kids are going to understand this just yet, unless you're in that spot in school where they've taught you about this stuff. Comic books, several years back, it used to be that comic books, they were highly regulated by a lot of stuff, like you couldn't print certain things, and if you did print certain things, you got in trouble. And there was censorship, and there's a lot of things, and there was a big court case. Series of court cases, really. It's always a series, it's never just one. And the comic book industry was declared a form of art protected by the First Amendment of the United States. And what that means is that comic books have freedom of speech, and that means that it's artistic freedom of speech, which means that they can pretty much print whatever they want, as controversial as they want. There's going to be like warnings, they got to put parental advisory and things on there. But you don't have somebody over your shoulder telling you, you can't put that in there. We don't like that. You're not allowed to say that. So there's been an explosion of mature topics in comic books over the last several years or so since that happened. And there's been so many things that they're now approaching in ways with relationships and with morals and ethics and things that they didn't before. And I like that as an adult. As a grown-up, I enjoy that kind of stuff. I think there should be more freedom of speech all the time. I think people should be free to say all kinds of things. And, not free from the consequences if you say something that's going to hurt somebody, but, free to say whatever anyway. But I do understand, too, that some things are a bit too much for kids, sometimes. So you should just moderate that kind of thing. If you're a parent, make sure you're moderating. Now, I don't mean censoring. I don't mean, like, blocking and being like, you can't ever look at that, blah, 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 while you live in my house. That kind of stuff. Just monitor things, and if they come across something that they don't understand, that maybe you weren't aware of, then be like, hey, let's have a talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's see. If you understand it, you understand it. If you don't understand it, then hey, let's not look at that right now. Let's wait until you're older, until you're bigger, because it always should be about understanding. Nobody should go into something not understanding. I'm not into censorship. I'm not into that kind of thing. I'm big into the First Amendment, but at the same time, I don't think somebody can just charge him, be like, hey, you're a piece of whatever, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and you suck. I don't think people can, yeah, they're gonna anyway, but I don't think they can just charge in and do that, and then escape with no consequences, if it's something truly vile and bad. Because a lot of times when people insult me, I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you can say all these bad things, but you don't know. The only person who knows for sure the truth about me is me. And if none of those things are true, what do I care? What does it matter? But bullying is really what I'm after, and that's, not tolerate. You can't tolerate that kind of stuff. Repeated, attacking somebody. I'm not into that. But, again, no censorship. And so comic books are now in that art form area. And I believe video games are in there as well, despite repeated attempts over the many, many years to vastly bring down the maturity level of video games. But they won a similar court case, if I remember, that they're now protected by the First Amendment. And you have a lot of comic book characters now that have video games as well. You got them in movies, like you got Marvel and DC are just pumping out superhero movies like nobody's business, and some of that stuff matches what's in the comic books, and some of it doesn't. And so you've got all kinds of that. What was I saying? Video games. You got the same thing. You got all kinds of superhero video games and things. And you've got Garfield video games based off the little strips, and they're far beyond that kind of stuff. And all kinds of stuff. It's everywhere. Comics have really been a major influence on our entertainment lives for a long time. More than I think we like to admit. But I like them. Like I said, I like the transforming robots stuff. Now they're getting into, and we touched on this on the anime episode from season 1. The anime episode, a lot of anime is based off of what's called manga, and I'm not going to act like I know a whole lot about it. I know the basics. It's basically Japan's answer to comic books. They have their own basically visual art comic style. And manga is like that, and the culture is a little different how they approach things. A lot of their stuff is automatically more mature at all levels, even for the sillier ones, even for the ones that were meant to be more like kid friendly, are still really more mature than American stuff, than United States based things. Just because their culture is different, they approach maturity in their kids a little different than we do. And I'm not saying anything good or bad about that. That's just how it is. That's how it is. And it's interesting. Manga generally has a definite start and an end. They tell a self-contained story. It may go on for like 50, 60, 100 or so issues, but eventually the story ends and the characters go on and do something else. And then that's it. And then they start a new one with new characters. And they make cartoons off of that. They make Japanese anime, and they make movies, and they make all that other kind of stuff, just like we do here. But our comics tend to just continue indefinitely, to the point where the only way to change a universe is to have, like, this big cataclysmic battle, and the universe gets destroyed and reset. Like, it's happened so many times in Marvel and DC and those kind of things. The universe just gets destroyed and gets put back together by some outside force. And then everybody starts off with no memory of what happened before, and there are new versions of the characters, and it just goes on. But it's still a continuing thing forever. It's just a forever thing, and other cultures don't do that. They have a definite beginning and a definite end. And then once it's over, they make something different. And it's an interesting approach. And most of their stuff, most of their manga, is more graphic novel sized. It's less individual like parts and more chunks, larger chunks. And it's usually done in black and white. It's not often in color. And I think that's just a stylistic, again, a culture choice, which makes things interesting when they adapt it to a visual form like an anime cartoon, because then you see the characters differently than how they were printed. You're like, oh man, I didn't know that so-and-so had this color hair, or this color eyes, or their outfit was this, I didn't have any idea. So it's just an interesting approach. And I'm not into the whole manga thing. I meant manga. I don't want to come off like I'm insensitive and just think manga. But I'm not into it so much, because some of the cultural things that they do, it just doesn't sit. Like, I'm not offended by it, or, I don't want people to get the wrong idea that it, like, bothers me. It's just, it throws off the narrative, and it throws off the immersion and things like that, And it's funny to talk about immersion for something that's clearly fantasy. It's comic books, you're not. But I like to see things as a fully visualized world, and where certain things are consistent and whatnot. And a lot of it's in the facial expressions. The facial expressions and some of the reactions in manga and anime to that same extent, just, they throw off the whole thing for me. They'll throw off and derail an entire story, and I can. Like, I'm thrown right out of it, and then I can't enjoy it. And So yeah, that's a bit different. It's a bit different. But it just goes to show how deep of a genre or of a phenomenon that comic books really are. Like, they're everywhere. China has their own comic books. A lot of Asia has their own comic books. There's comic book companies based in Europe now, I think. I don't think they're as big in the Middle East, mainly because a lot of the countries in the Middle East, and I don't want to make a big generalization. I don't want to make a big, like, stereotypical thing. But a lot of the countries over there have very strict religious rules, and one of those rules is they don't have caricature. They don't have the presentation of people in printed media. You know, it's like an idolatry kind of thing. If you know what that means, and if you don't, that's okay. So you don't have a lot of that over there. They don't like cartoons. They don't much like cartoons, printed or otherwise, for a lot of reasons. And I can't get into all those reasons here because that's a whole separate topic. But you don't get very much comics in that part of the world. But you do get them out of Asia. I believe there's South Korean mangas, or, you know, there's probably a different word for it, but it's basically their version of that. You've got Thailand and things like that. They make their own stuff. And then here in the United States, of course, we got the main comic books. We got the big comic book companies. You got Marvel, you got DC, you got Dark Horse, you got IDW, you got Image Comics, all kinds. And there's more. There's a lot more than and I've seen some weird comics when I was a kid. There was this one that came out. It was something about crystal warriors or something like that. But it was these people that came in contact with these alien gems that turned them into basically like giant muscular troll dolls, because trolls were big at the time with the big hair, the big hair. And so like they had action. It was based off action figures. They wanted new action figures. So there was like He-Man style bodies with troll heads. And they were like the Crystal Keepers or something like that. And I had one issue of that I got as a free comic from somewhere from Free Comic Book Day. And it was kind of weird. But G.I. Joe comics, I had a couple issues of that. And some of those got pretty mature too. Like they got into like battling battling organized crime that was running drugs and ruining people's lives and things like that. Because that was real big in the 90s. The whole war on drugs and things started. Might have started in the 80s, I don't remember for sure. But that was a big focus, and it showed people's lives, just how badly the drugs affected them and what they would do for them and stuff. So that was pretty grown up for comics. But yeah, comic books. I like them. What are some of your favorite comic books? Do you like the comic books themselves? Do you get issue by issue? Would you prefer to get the big old omnibus graphic novel things, or do you just like your Sunday funnies? You just buy the newspaper, whatever your local is, and get your Sunday funnies. Yeah, that's fine too. That's what I did as a kid. That's what I would do. Anytime we had the newspaper out on Sunday in my house, I'd race to see if I'd be the first. See if I'd be the first between me and my sisters. First to get the Sunday funnies and to read the comics. Marmaduke and that kind of thing. They weren't always very funny, but, we were kids. That's what we wanted to see. Right? So, alright, so that's what I got. Comic books. I like them. My daughter has a big old collected set of Garfield comic strips, so she likes that. And she's into like My Little Pony, and they have comic books because they're owned by Hasbro, and Hasbro has comics for everything. They have crossover comics for everything, so they got crossovers between my robots and her ponies. And I told her I'd try to get her one of these days. I'm gonna probably get her a digital version so that she can read it on her tablet, because it's easy these days. I put them on my tablet now. Actually, I download comics, and I put them on my tablet because they're easier to read, easier to keep track of. I have a few physicals in a box upstairs to stay nice, and I pull them out and read them every so often. But mostly I keep them collected in digital because it's just easier that way. It's easier other way. And I hope I'm not putting anybody out of a job doing it that way, the people who do the paper and then do that kind of stuff. Because it scans of the work that people have done, so it's not like it's all created, outside of somebody's hard work. Hopefully. I don't know. But that's it. That's comic books. Like I said, if you have a favorite comic book and you want to tell me all about it, by all means, drop a comment when this hits YouTube, and I will gladly read it. And or you can put it on me. I don't know what all that's about, but you can put it on my Facebook page. Spider Does Things on Facebook, and matches the YouTube channel Spider Does Things on YouTube. And I would love to hear from you. I would love to get some comments and some feedback and all that good stuff. It'd be great. It'd be great. I don't get enough feedback from you folks, and I would like to get more. I would like to get all the feedback I can possibly get to tell me what you want me to talk about, tell me what you don't want me to talk about, tell me why I'm so into certain things, and blah, 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 all that stuff. And why I do this voice when my real voice just sounds kind of like this. Why would I do that? Because it sounds kind of awesome when I do this, I think. I don't know. I like it better. It's a radio voice. It's a radio voice. So I'm going to get going. Hope you guys had a good time. I will catch you guys next week.